Hello, this is Katrin, and I'm going to start this part, submission best practices for different data types. So best practices. This is a summary and a reminder of what we have learned so far. So it's about when to submit data, what, why, and how to submit data, and where to find information and help. When to submit data? Basically, as early as possible. So as early would be as soon as your dataset is complete, including the metadata, and at the latest when you submit your manuscript related to your dataset. A moratorium is an option, and a moratorium means that the data is already published, but the access is restricted. Only the metadata is visible, but not the actual data. What, why, and how to submit data. So it's basically all about the metadata. So why is the metadata so important? What kind of metadata is needed? Well, the answers vary. It all depends on the dataset, so therefore we are going to look at some examples. But first, why is metadata so important? So basically, metadata give the context, and data without context is simply useless. So remember, in order to have a fair dataset, you need to know what, who, where, when, and how the data was collected. Let's look at some examples. We start with an example of tabular data. Tabular data are data that can be stored in the relational database. A relational database is a specific database where the data points can be stored related to each other. This is important if you want to search for specific data afterwards. We then have more examples on binary data. Those cannot be put into the relational database. And the third example is on collections. Our first example is on field measurements. So here we have temperature and conductivity given at a specific time and latitude-longitude information. Together with your data, you need to submit the authors and a title and an abstract. The parameters will be shown with a long name and a short name. You need to give a unit, a principal investigator, and information about the method or device that was used. If comments are needed in order to describe your data, in this case it's a quality flag or the meanings of a quality flag, then you need to state them too. For this example, there is further information given. So in this case, there is a cruise report, a data processing report, information about the project. Coverage is computed automatically and given with each dataset. And in this case, there is an event. Events are usually logged with larger campaigns. In this example, the ship Meteor was out on this campaign, and at this time step, at this given position, the thermoselenograph was used. So for this example, the following metadata is needed: the time and location of the measurement, device and method information, a principal investigator, data description, for example about quality flags, and if applicable, if available, an event or reports about the processing, or if this dataset is related to others. And this is to ensure the traceability of origin of the measurement and the analysis procedure. The next example is about a laboratory experiment dataset. So again, you need to give a title and the authors and an abstract. The parameters all need the unit, a principal investigator, and the information which method or device was used. There's further information about different data sets that are related to this one, different papers, and a long list of events. So the metadata needed for a laboratory experiment is the time and location of the sample or the organism collection from nature, plus the time of the experiment, device and method information, principal investigator, data description, and if applicable, an event, additional reports, or relations to other datasets. And this is to ensure the traceability of the origin of the sample and the time passed before use in experiment. This is an example on literature compilation. So individual data that was already published and is then summarized and used in a new way, in a new data set. As usual, you need to give the information about the title and the authors and an abstract. And in this example, you can see what it looks like if your dataset is part of a larger collection. So this is the title and the authors of this dataset, which is part of this collection. This is the table of parameters given at the long name, short name, and units, and the principal investigator. In this example, it's a rather long list. This data is part of a manuscript, which is stated here under Supplement 2, and all the literature which was used for this dataset is listed under Related To. There's information about project and funding, and then all the events that are given for the other datasets. So the metadata needed is the time and location of the measurement in the experiment, and all references, that includes literature and data, need to be given in full with DOI. You need the information of the device and the method, principal investigator, and additional data description. If applicable, give information about events and processing reports or other related datasets. And this is to ensure the traceability of the origin of the measurement or the experiment, and that's very important to credit the original work. The next example, a set of raw data format files. So this is what we call binary data, and this is not and it cannot be put into a relational database. So if you look at this table of data, then you can see it's not data points of temperature at a given time and location, but this is, for example, bottle position data or original raw CTD data or header information data or, for example, configuration files, and these are all linked to different CTD casts, and each CTD cast has an individual event, which is also stored here. So, of course, and again, as usual, you need authors and a title plus an abstract. And in this example, you have further details given and a project, plus a long list of events and the parameters. The parameter table is a rather short one, and it's given like this, that you have the events, the date and the time, the latitude, longitude, plus a list of binary objects, their file content description, and a file size information. So the metadata needed is, as always, time and location of the measurement or the experiment, a principal investigator, and a description of the file content. If available, please give the event. And this is to ensure the traceability of time and origin of the measurement. Here's another example of binary data. In this case, it's image files. And again, the information of date and time and the position is very important and needs to be given for each image. In this example, this data file is part of a larger collection, which you can see that there is the authors and the title given uh, of this data set, but this is listed in a larger collection named underneath. So such as the other raw data file example, you can see that date, time, latitude, longitude information is given, so the geocode needs to be given, plus information about the image. In this case, it's the link to the image plus further information. So the metadata needed is the time and location of the image, the principal investigator, a description of the image, and, if applicable, an event. And this is to ensure the traceability of time and origin of the image. Here's now an example of a collection. In this example, it's a publication series. And that means that it's a list of individual data sets, and they're all very similar. In this example, it's all drift trajectories of different locations of the mosaic flow. And they're all very similar and all linked together, so they are then stored in a collection. This is the example of one of the individual data sets of this publication series. So each individual data set of this series has its own title, list of authors, and which is not visible, an abstract. And it's always linked to the original collection. So here's further metadata about different papers where this is related to, about information about the project and the funding, and the individual events linked to these data sets. And this is a pictogram of the structure of a collection. So you have the actual collection means that you have a parent of the collection, so the overall description. And each individual data set of this collection is called a child data set. And the important part is that each data set has its metadata, and each data set has its abstract. So where to find information and help? So there is a specific wiki just for Pangea. There's lots of information stored, and here I'd like to point out that there is also information about best practice manuals and templates, and about data submission. If you have specific questions, you can always click the Contact Us button, or after you have submitted your data, each data set has its own ticket, and you can contact your specific data curator via the ticket. And you can always do that even after the ticket got closed.